Hello YouTube. I am going to be doing a book review on Susan Collins, who wrote The Hunger Games. I decided to find out if she wrote any other books because I really loved reading the Hunger Games series, or the trilogy, and I like the way that she wrote it. I like how adventurous she is in her writing, and I just wanted to find out if she had written any other books, and she did. And she wrote actually a Chronicle series called Gregor the Overlander, and even though it's targeted towards a younger crowd, I guess I'm young at heart. And I love reading adventure books, and I took it upon myself to order. Well, first of all, I went around in bookstores trying to find Gregor the Overlander, considering that it might be popular since the Hunger Games came out. It was a big hit, so I would assume that most bookstores would kind of hype in Susan Collins' other books. Sadly to say, it was nearly impossible to try to find Gregor the Overlander Chronicles. So I took it upon myself to order it on Amazon, and I was lucky to find it. And here it is. There's 5 books here. This is how it looks like. Gregor the Overlander Chronicles, and I am going to go through each one. I'm going to try my best not to do spoilers, so please forgive me. Like I said, I'm going to do my best because it's so action-packed that you just want to include everything, in describing the books, but I'm going to try my hardest to not give you a spoiler. So when I first read this, I couldn't put it down. To be quite honest, I found myself coming home from work and just, made some dinner, grabbed a beer, sat down and read the book, and it was a page turner, like a total page turner, and I finished all 5 books in 1 week. It's a nice easy read. Each book is about 300 pages, so it was very easy to dive into it and get caught up in the fantasy world that she creates, which is, in my opinion, she did a great job. Susan Collins, if you are watching this, which I doubt, but if you are watching this, please continue with this Gregor the Overlander Chronicles. Please continue it. It'd be awesome to hear, maybe, possibly, in your next series or Chronicles, maybe Luxa goes up to the Overland, or maybe Luxa and Gregor, end up getting married and maybe having a child. Maybe that child ventures off into the unknown world that's not on their map. More adventures and stuff like that. So, but anyways, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book, let me take it out here. So the very first book is this one, Gregor the Overlander. So what happens is Gregor, I believe he's about 11 years old, and he has a sister that's around 8, I think, and then a younger sister that's about 2 years old, and excuse me. So Gregor's 11. His 8-year-old sister Lizzie, and his 2-year-old Margaret, which they called Boots, because she likes to, during the winter, she likes to put on boots and walk around the house. So her nickname is Boots. She's known as Boots throughout this entire series. So Gregor and his family, they're relatively poor. They live in New York City, and they all kind of bunch up in one, I believe it's like a 1-bedroom apartment. The mom works her butt off and has 2 jobs, and the dad is a scientist. That's a scientist teacher. And, in the beginning of the book, it says that Gregor's father had disappeared. He's been gone for about, 2 years, 7 months, and blah, blah, blah days. And he vanished without a trace, without a note, without saying anything. And you could tell that the mom is really stressed out. The family's stressed out because she's the only source of income. And Gregor ends up, helping around the house and trying to be the big brother, pretty much the man of the house. And in one particular day, it was laundry day, so he and Boots went down to do laundry. And a quarter happened to roll by the air duct in the laundry room, and Boots goes over to try to grab it, and there's some type of current that happens behind the heater, and Boots gets sucked in, and he goes to try to catch her, and he hears her, but he doesn't hear a thunk, so it's this black abyss, and he jumps in after her. And he's like floating down. It's pitch black. He's floating down. He doesn't feel anything. He's been, going down this abyss for quite some time, maybe like 5 minutes. But finally, he just ends up falling down. But something cushions his blow, and he can't see anything. And down through this tunnel, he ends up seeing this faint light, and he goes over and he runs smack dab right into his sister. And his sister, she's just like, big bug. And he looks up, and it's this huge cockroach, and they're called crawlers. Pretty much all the animals are named after what they do, like cutters for ants, flyers for bats, gnawers for rats, stuff like that. So he runs into this huge cockroach, and they talk a little funny. They're the only character or animal character in here that talks a little funny, but man, I have much respect for cockroaches after reading this book. So they end up riding on the cockroaches to this huge city called Regalia. And they stumble upon this city when they're playing in this arena, and everyone's like stunned because this world underneath barely ever or rarely sees an Overlander. Now it's called Overland because it's a land over their heads, and they live underland, so they're called Underlanders. And they stumble in upon this game, and it's the royal family playing against another royal family or something like that. And that's when they notice that they fly on bats, which are kind of like equivalent to horses, and Luxa is a queen. She's a young queen, but she gets to rule of age at the age of 16, but she still has, queenly duties. And she ends up kind of showing off in front of Gregor. They happen to be the same age, and so he really wants to get out of this this Underland because he wants to get back to his mom, considering that the dad has been gone for years, and now all of a sudden, the eldest and the youngest happen to disappear, and so he's really wanting to go home. And the royal family takes them in, treats them as a guest. They're really nice to them, but they are insistent on him washing his body because the Overlanders throw off a scent, and since they're extremely rare in the Underland, they word of mouth gets out there, and the bad guys in this book are the gnawers, which are the rats, not the mice, but the rats. So the rats are like, I would say, like the Vikings, of the Overland. They're crazy. They're out for blood. They want to take over and rule the Underland. So, you know, he goes and takes a bath, and then he finds this waterway that leads, you know, back to where he was. So throughout the night, he slips out, and this is where the adventure comes in. He finds out exactly how dangerous it is in the Underland. He has his sister on this backpack that the Underlander has made for him, so that he doesn't have to carry her in her arms, and he can navigate, you know, throughout the city easy. So he tries to escape, and he encounters his first rat, or two rats to be quite honest, and part of the royal family, and the guards, you know, are found out about his escape, so they take their bats, they go and try to rescue him, and the one that actually really saves his life is Luxa, the queen. And she gets really mad at him, slaps him in the face, and you know, there's a lot of comedy in here, you know, reluctantly, and of course the adventure is amazing. And now, you know, word spreads that, you know, that they killed two Nars. Now the rats are really angry, and now you know, word of mouth is, you know, an Overlander is you know, is in the Underland, and then after they rescue him, they bring him back, and Luxa, her grandfather, his name is Vicus, and Vicus explains to Gregor that there's this prophecy. It's called you know, the prophecy of Bane, B-A-Y, the prophecy of Bane, and it entails a heroic warrior that, you know, saves the Underland from the rule of this other rat called Gorger. It's kind of like an anagram, Gregor and Gorger. So they kind of think that Gregor is the warrior, even though, of course, Gregor's like, I'm no warrior, I'm just a kid. And there goes the adventure. They go and set off on this adventure, and there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of heroic scenes, and a lot of deception, and you know, yeah, so it's really cool. Because of the Underland, there's a lot of diversity, where certain groups don't get along with other groups, but in order to fulfill the prophecy of Bane, to overcome the rat Gorger and his evil army, a lot of animals have to actually come together and form, you know, unity, or become allies to fulfill the prophecy of Bane. And oh my gosh, it was amazing. I truly enjoyed reading this book, and I couldn't wait to read the second book. So let me go ahead and get the second book. I'm going to turn off the camera because I can see my battery is about to die, and then I'll get into the second book, okay? Alright, so I just got finished telling you about the very first book, Gregor the Overlander, and after that first book, he actually does start to believe that he really is the warrior that the Underlanders have been waiting for. So now let's get into the second book, Gregor and the Prophecy of Bane. Now this one here, by far, out of all of the books, is by far the most adventurous, which is one of my favorite books out of all of the 5. So in this book, they talk about the prophecy of Bane. Bane happens to be a very well-known rat. In the prophecy, the rat is supposed to be like 12 feet tall, huge, massive, strong, deadly, and his color is white, which is very rare. Most of them are either black or gray, and so it's easy to spot him out, but he is by far probably the largest rat. And in this prophecy, it requires the warrior, which is Gregor, to go and find the Bane and kill him. So throughout throughout. I'm not going to tell you what happened in the first book because that would definitely be a spoiler, but he happens to accidentally go back to the Underland because the cockroaches ended up kidnapping Boots, because the prophecy of Bane requires the princess to accompany the warrior. And in the first book, the cockroaches think that Boots is the princess in the prophecy, not actually Luxa, who is the actual queen, but the cockroaches think that Boots is the princess. So, but yeah, so the cockroaches end up kidnapping Boots while they're in New York sledding, and then it's another. There's 5 gateways from New York to get into the Underland. And there have been some overlanders that have fallen into the Underland throughout the 5 gateways. 4 out of the 5 end up landing in very dangerous, in a dangerous part of the Underland, and majority of them don't survive. And it was just very unfortunate that Gregor and Boots fell through the safest gateway. So he ends up going to one of the dangerous gateways, and a bat named Ares. He is one of the largest bats and one of the strongest bats that used to belong to Henry, who was part of the royal family. You'll hear about that. I don't want to give a spoiler about that, but Ares. So anyways, excuse that noise in the background. It's just excuse that noise if it's too loud, so I'll try to speak over it. But anyways, so yeah, so he goes through this very dangerous gateway, and the rats pick up his scent, and Ares happens to be there, and one of the most important things for Gregor is to bring light, because they are a city that does not live with natural lighting. They don't have electricity, so they depend on oil and fire to light up their city. And trees are very rare, obviously, because you need sun to grow trees. And there is there are some plants because they have an underground volcano which lights underneath the water, and it kind of sparkles up, and that gives off natural lighting. So there are some plants there that grow. So anyways, Ares ends up saving Gregor as he falls down this gateway, and then throughout the book he forms a bond. Most of the Underlanders form a bond with their flyer, which is the bats. They do this like ceremony and ritual or whatever, and they're bonded together. They will die for each other. They won't abandon each other, which is really cool. So his bond, Ares, saves him, and then he's really mad because the cockroaches took his sister, but then he finds out the reason why. And then of course Vicus, the grandfather of Luxa, says, unfortunately you're part of another prophecy, which is, he did not want to hear that. And so he ends up finding out through this book. He finds out that he is what's called a rager. Pretty much everything around him gets blocked out except for what he's focusing on, and this just natural rager instinct comes out of him. So he's a total animal, and there's only one other animal in this book that has the rager sensation, and that is from the first book, a rat named Rip Red, which is one of my favorite characters because he is sarcastic and he is hilarious, but also deadly. So he is one of my favorite characters among many, and Rip Red is he has the rager sensation, and so does the warrior. So now he really is starting to believe that he really is the warrior that the prophecy talks to him about. And so they go on this journey to find the Bane. And throughout this journey, oh my goodness, there is, they venture off into the really far part of the unknown Underland. They're in the water. There's a huge whirlpool that, you know, they're trying to fight this massive whirlpool, and they get sucked in, and then this adventure to get them out. And then finally they end up, you know, spotting land after this long, you know, journey on the water. And just to find out that the land is super deadly with mites that kind of act like piranhas. And, you know, I don't want to give a spoiler away, but, you know, something happens and they get away from the land. And finally, you know, there were two ships. One of the ships went down in the whirlpool, and then one of the ships got saved. And then, you know, most of the food happened to be on the first ship. So while they're trying to find the land where the Bane is at, or a cave or whatever, they finally, they're dehydrated, they're hungry, and they finally find it, you know, last minute. But, you know, since all their energy is out of them, they happen to stumble upon a gang of rats or gnars. And then, you know, also I forgot, on their journey there, they end up, there's this huge octopus that tries to bring him down, and oh my goodness, there's so much adventure in this book, and I absolutely love it. They finally find the Bane. Will not give a spoiler on that. You'll have to read it to find out. But they finally find the Bane, and you know, half of the royal family is lost because of this journey. They're trying to find their way back, and the other half make it back to Regalia, the city, but the other half is still lost, and they don't know if they're dead or whatever. And I'm not going to tell you exactly who, but part of the royal family. And oh my goodness, oh my goodness, this by far is the most adventurous. So all right, so let's get into the third book. Gregor and the Curse of the Warmbloods. Now, the Warmbloods are pretty much any animal with warm blood. And in this book, part of Gregor's family ends up going down, like his mom finally goes down to see, you know, the land, and she ends up, the reason why they go down is because Ares and Ripred go to Gregor, and, excuse me, sorry, I had some soda, so I'm a little burpy here. But anyway, so Ares and Ripred send a note and telling Gregor, hey, you know, we need your help. You know, our people have I think a plague. A plague is spreading throughout the land of the Underland, and we need your help. And you know, so when he goes down there, or actually, it wasn't Ares. I'm sorry. It wasn't Ares, it was another bat. It was Aurora, which is Luxa's bat. I think I'm getting this wrong. I'm sorry, Vicus, his bat. He has a huge bat. Oh, I cannot pronounce the bat's name. Yeah, it was Vicus's bat that takes him from the gateway, the safe gateway with Ripred, and they explain the plague. So he goes into the city of Regalia, but goes straight to the hospital to make sure he gets his vaccinations so that he doesn't get the plague. And in doing so, he has to go and tell his mom, you know, they have the plague, and they need my help and this and that, and the mom is not happy, so she goes down there and takes Boots with her, but Lizzie doesn't want to go because she's just scared. She's kind of a chicken, and Lizzie happens to be a brilliant child. She's really good with numbers and puzzles and stuff, so that'll come in the very last book. But yeah, so she goes down there with Boots, and then she ends up contracting the plague, Boots doesn't, but the mom is really sick, and now Gregor doesn't go anywhere without Boots, so that he can keep an eye on her. And the whole thing is, the whole journey here is to go and find a cure for regalia, because majority of the people in regalia, I'm not sure if it's 2/3 or 1/3 of the regalians are infected with the plague. Same with a lot of the Underland Warmbloods, a lot of the species. So he goes through this jungle where the plants are deadly. I mean, you can't use any weapons because they see it as, I mean, the minute you take your sword out of the sheath, they take it as, you know, they're ready to fight, even though you have it just in case. But if they see the sword, they're gonna attack you, and they're vines, so they're really strong, and they can rip you, you know, into two. And then there's poisonous flowers that can actually eat you alive. And then there's this one part which I thought was hilarious, because Rip Red is so fast. He guides them through this tunnel of vines, and thank goodness that he's fast, because if he went there slow, these it's kind of like a trigger, like an alarm. So Rip Red goes straight through the tunnel, and all these flowers send off this alarm, a natural powder or whatever it is, or mist, and it makes you hallucinate. It makes you laugh hysterically. So when he gets, you know, when he gets everyone through the tunnels, of course, because he's so strong, it didn't really affect him, but everyone's just like laughing hysterically. It's really funny. Also, a hidden secret with the royal family is also opened. A lot of hurt feelings start to come up again with the royal family, and then in this journey, the other half of the royal family that disappeared in this book, the Prophecy of Bane, you know, they come up in here, and you'll find out who it is. And then they find out the true, where the true, what is it? The so they end up finding the plant that that's inside the center of this jungle, this deadly jungle, and in doing so, there's the cutters, which are ants. They're huge. I mean, massive. They're like 10 feet tall, or what are they? 6 feet tall or something like that. And their claws, their teeth are just massive. And obviously, where there's one ant, there's a million of them. So that's when Rip Red has his rager instincts come out. Same with the warrior. And they fight, you know, they fight off the ants, and they're trying to save the plants, but, you know, I won't give you a spoiler on that one, but, yeah, and then, there's a half-breed, which is half Overlander, half Underlander, that is actually part of the royal family, and his name is Hazard, and he is about 6 years old. He's so sweet. Black hair, green eyes, which is very rare to have in the Underland, because the Underlanders have pale skin, where you could see, this is what Gregor said from the first book, the description of the Underlanders have like a silvery color hair, violet eyes, and very pale skin, where you can actually see their veins. So here's this little, you know, in this journey they find part of the royal family who happens to be a half-breed, and he has, you know, green eyes, still the pale skin, and black hair, and, you know, curly black hair. So he and Boots like each other, you know, they start, Hazard starts teaching Boots how to talk animal, you know, lots of clicking noises and stuff like that. So it's kind of cute, very cute. And This is the least of my favorite out of all the books because it's not as adventurous. I mean, there is adventure in here, but it's not as adventurous as The Prophecy of Bane. I mean, this by far is the most adventurous, but don't get me wrong, this one is still pretty good, but if I had to choose, this is the least of my favorite, or the least of my favorites in this Chronicle series. So, then there's yeah, I don't know if I should, yeah. So something happens with the plague. You'll find out at the very end of the book. Not a good thing. So yeah, I won't tell you about that, okay? I'm going to try to keep myself from giving you spoilers. So that is the Curse of the Warmbloods. On to the next one is Gregor and the Marks of Secrets. Here it is. And that is the Bane. So the Bane ends up being 12 feet tall, and he there's these marks where Hazard, the little kid from the last book, he notices this mark, and the mark is very well known within the animal species, and especially in the jungle, and in the jungle are mice, nibblers. They're called nibblers, and they are allies with the humans, and so he has a very strong liking to the nibblers, and the nibblers try to side with the humans, and they're spies because they're so small that they can get in and out of spaces easily, and but yeah, so Hazard ends up noticing a code. I don't know, it's like a weird mark. It explains it in the book. And he notices the mark, and he said that it's not good because that means that they're coming after you. Whoever sees this, they're coming after you and they're about to kill you. And they found out who it was. It's all the Nars are getting together because the Bane has become, this evil rat, exactly what the prophecy of Bane was. He ends up being this mean, evil rat that wants to take over, even worse than the King Gorger. And so he pretty much, it's kind of like World War I or World War II, World War III underneath the Underland. So now everyone really has to side with each other. The spiders with the humans, even though they're kind of neutral, but they end up siding with the humans. And so part of the royal family goes to find out their hidden spot in this in the center of this volcanic land. I forgot the name of the land, but Gregor's there, Boots is there, Ares, and all these very strong bats. And I don't want to give the spoiler away, but it has to do with mice as well. Yeah, I don't want to give it away. So, but anyways, they go into this volcano, they witness something really horrible, and they want to try to save a lot of the animals after witnessing the horrible act that the rats are doing. And the thing is, the volcano is obviously, if you don't know anything about volcanoes, it spews ashes, which is very dangerous. It is filled with poisons, and this volcano ends up erupting, and then everyone's breathing this in, and half of the team ends up staying to try to help the animals, and the other half of the team ends up going back to try to tell the royal council what's going on, that they need help from the army. And so that's pretty much this book, and it's kind of like part one, and then the part two, which is a very last book, Gregor and the Code of Claw. So in this book, it pretty much picks up from here. So they end up getting the army to go and fight or to go and join the other team that happened to stay in the volcano, but they, you know, they're really sick because they've been breathing in all the poisons, and down to the wire, Gregor and the Bane fights, and Ares is amazing. You know, he's just Ares, the flyer, is just amazing with Gregor, and Rip Red is amazing, fighting, and Luxa, and oh my goodness, and the cockroach that that always attends to Boots. His name is Temp. He does an amazing job as well. The fighting scenes in here are amazing, very very heroic, and totally action packed, and a lot of deadly wounds. You know, a lot of people get hurt, and the unfortunate thing, a lot of people die in here. Of course, I'm not going to tell you who, but it's really sad. Well, pretty much in every book someone dies. So, but the most deaths are in this book, and it's yeah, it's pretty sad. But even some characters that I absolutely love. You know, it broke my heart to find out that, you know, they didn't make it, but they died very heroically. And but yeah, so after that, Luxa and Gregor end up, you know, having a thing for each other, which is really sweet. Young love. It actually is very sweet. That's why I want Susan Collins to continue with this Overlander series, so that I can read about Gregor and Luxa. But yeah, and then so then now the city, after you know, they save some of the animals, they go back to Regalia, the royal family that happened to be in the volcano for a very long time. They have to go through a cleansing because they were, you know, breathing in poisonous ashes and air, and you know, they survive, and then they have, you know, they have a war to fight, you know, and so they end up fighting the war, you know, with it's the rats versus, you know, the other animals that sided with the humans, or the Regalians, and so that battle ends up happening, and oh man, it's very adventurous. And then of course the story ends, but the good thing is, Susan Collins left the very last chapter open, which is a good sign that maybe possibly she is going to maybe hopefully write more. Oh, by the way, I forgot about Lizzie. Lizzie actually finally comes down to help crack the code of Claw. There's a special code. It's a very intricate code, and Lizzie likes, you know, she likes mathematics, and she also is very good with puzzles, and she is actually she happens to be the princess that the whole prophecy has been talking about, even though they thought it was Boots. But the thing is, it still worked out. So anyways, Lizzie kind of saves the day, very last minute, with her cracking the code. So she ends up being the huge key in this book on cracking the code, and you know, last minute heroism, and last minute, you know, code breaking saves the royal family, and oh my goodness. So, but yeah, very good book. And that's pretty much my book review on Susan Collins' Gregor the Overlander series. So I enjoyed it immensely, and I can't believe that I read all 5 of them in 1 week. So that's how good it was. And despite it being for a younger audience, I truly loved these Chronicle series. And if I were you, go out and get it, buy it, read it, especially for, I bought it for my niece for Christmas, and I hope that she enjoys it as much as I did. And for anyone that is up for adventure, regardless of the age, it is a wonderful series. So that's pretty much my review. Thank you for watching.